All right, Shalom. This is brother Rod Kakama from the Grand Rapids Israelite Camp. And first and foremost, I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, which is the name of the Heavenly Father, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai being the name of His only begotten Son, by Hashem, Rakah Kodash, which is the Holy Spirit. And pretty much I'm going to be getting into this article, says Whole Foods quietly halts GMO labeling requirements. So as brothers that's familiar with Whole Foods, is pretty much known for only selling organic foods in the grocery stores, and pretty much this article is going to be going into how they pretty much is not going to be enforcing whether if the Food or Drug Administration or the United States Department of Agriculture properly labels food for genetically modified organisms. All right. So it says, a year after Whole Foods was acquired by internet retail giant Amazon, the food company is backing off its commitment to ensuring that food suppliers inform the consumer in the store itself if their food products contain GMOs. There is some confusion about the decision by Whole Foods to walk back on its commitment, but one thing is for sure, it is walking back. It is an email sent by Whole Foods President and Chief Operations Officer A.C. Gallo announced that the company is pausing its GMO food labeling requirements. The requirements, which are scheduled to take effect on September 1st, would have required that suppliers disclose on their packaging whether or not their products contain genetically modified ingredients. The requirements, which are announced 5 years ago, were 3 months away from being implemented. It says, in a copy of the announcement obtained by the New Food Economy, Gallo and two vice presidents write that the pause is a response to suppliers' concerns about having to comply with two competing sets of rules: Whole Foods' own GMO labeling requirements and rules newly proposed by the United States Department of Agriculture, which are currently open for public comment. As the United States Department of Agriculture finalizes the federal regulation in the coming months and the food industry assesses the impact, we do not want our policy to pose further challenges for you and your business, the letter reads. As this begs the question, is Whole Foods softening its commitment to GMO labeling transparency? The confusion is understandable, as currently proposed, the United States Department of Agriculture policy will make several substantive changes to the way GMOs have traditionally been defined by the food industry, starting with the terminology itself. The government's preferred nomenclature is bioengineered, which only refers to a food that has had another organism's gene spliced into it by a process called transgenesis. Other types of genetic modification, including some produced by gene editing tools like CRISPR, would not need to be labeled. Okay, so I pulled up the definition for transgenesis. Okay. It says transgenesis is the process of introducing an exogenous gene called a transgene into a living organism so that the organism will exhibit a new property and transmit that property to its offspring. Which is totally off according to the scriptures, because that's changing the balance of one organism to exhibit the characteristics of another, and that's disrupting the balance that the Most High had already created by making a certain organism or a certain creature perfect the way it is. That throws off its balance and its chemistry. So this is Leviticus 19:19. It says, "Ye shall keep my statutes. Thou shalt not let thy cattle gender with a diverse kind. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed. Neither shall a garment mingled of linen and woolen come upon thee." Now, as a matter of fact, let's look up the definition real quick. All right, so according to that definition for the word gender, rabbi, basically meaning to cause or lay down for cattle breeding. Basically, like you weren't supposed to mate two animals of two different types of species of a different kind together, But Esau is changing the whole genetic makeup by basically implanting certain genes into their DNA to alter the state of their DNA, And it also says, you weren't supposed to sow your field with mingled seed, which we already know that pretty much you got GMO fruit out there that pretty much, if it doesn't have seed, you really shouldn't be eating of that fruit as well, So let's go back to the article. It says, as currently written, Whole Foods requirements will be more stringent than the proposed USDA rules in at least two significant ways. First, the United States Department of Agriculture has suggested letting companies label the ingredients or a QR code, meaning that customers would need to be directed to a website via smartphone to find out what's in their food. A method that has been criticized as a cumbersome extra step. Because who the fuck wants to sit there, when you go to the grocery store, you looking at the ingredients, and then unless they're going to create an app or some bullshit that you can download to your smartphone to have all the QR codes for, whatever GMO process or GMO ingredients that they use for certain food products. So, who really wants to go through that shit when it should just be in its original state, That's just Esau, being the fucking devil, man. Project Nash reports second USDA rules containing perplexing carve-outs for meat products, which are regulated under a different system, as explained here and here. And if you brothers want to read the article, y'all can go to those two links. It says Whole Foods now faces a choice. It can move forward with its original plan or defer to the government's less comprehensive new rules. The company has the ability to be clearer and more stringent than the federal regulations requiring all foods that might contain genetically modified ingredients to say as such. Deferring to USDA rules would instead require only that some GMO-containing products are labeled as such, likely a sore point on non-GMO advocates and not necessarily great for the Whole Foods brand. It will mean that a company that's long claimed the moral high ground will be no more transparent as far as GMO labeling goes than any other grocery store. So as far as Whole Foods being committed to making sure that if you're going to be eating genetically modified ingredients in your food, that's going to be pretty much obsolete real soon, because it's going to be pretty much like any other grocery store. Pretty much they don't have to tell you shit. Because the Food and Drug Administration, they don't really give a shit about, as far as certain ingredients that get into, your food. They'll already pass it as saying that it's classified being good enough to eat. When these types of foods, have a high cost for cancer because of these foods being unnatural. You know, it says the chain's new position is in direct contrast to the one it announced 5 years ago in 2013 when the co-CEO Walter Robb said in a statement, "We are putting a stake in the ground on GMO labeling to support the consumer's right to know." Unfortunately, Whole Foods has pulled up the stake on their promise. It remains to be seen how much the corporation will be hurt by this move, since a sizable portion of their customer base is opposed to consuming GMOs. All right. So, and plus, you know, a lot of Edomites, a lot of so-called white people, you know, can afford to really even go to these places. You know, you Jakes, you know, you got to do research as far as like, you know, certain foods that have or don't have GMOs. But unfortunately, as far as like, you know, the shit that they put out there, and as far as Jake being disadvantaged economically to shop at these different places, that's why I would recommend going to the farmers markets and stuff like that, as far as knowing things that are naturally grown. And they even have, you know, meats that they actually raise, like from livestock themselves, you know, that they put in the circulation for you to buy. I recommend you going to those places, you know. But this is also, you know, just another demonstration of the curses as well. This is Salaki. This is Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 13. It says, "And the Lord Yahweh said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will drive them." All right, so we've been scattered into all nations, and the main captivity of being here in America, you find out that pretty much America is like one of the biggest sources or biggest consumers of genetically modified foods in the world, while most of these other countries completely reject these companies like Monsanto and things of that nature that put these genetically modified foods into circulation. So with that, I will highly recommend that you constantly pray over your food, and also, you know, just seek better avenues as far as consuming the right types of you know, food and nutrition, you know. So with that, I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostle elders of Great Millstone, and salutations to you brothers out there laboring and doing this work in truth and sincerity. Shalom.